Hey guys, GHJ here, and it's time to get back into covering the main story of Alchemy Stars. A new type of adventure awaits Navigator, as he gets a glimpse at the history and secrets within this world, diving into episode 13. So without further ado, let's get straight into this episode. Starting the episode off, we see that Navigator and Vice are taking their time to relax in Cloud Garden, where it's a valley within Araville that Navigator has settled in after reclaiming his home. The two of them were enjoying themselves as they were taking in the peaceful atmosphere. Then something strange started to happen. All of a sudden, Lumina was slowly starting to leak out of Vice. Immediately, Navigator believed this could be some after effect from the cord link. Vice told him that she was feeling fine physically, and that for now it's just Lumina releasing at a slow pace. Making sure he doesn't go into a complete panic, Vice recommended they go back to Ganon to see if they could find out what's happening to her. Figuring to contact Vivian, they explained what was happening and were on their way over. And that's when she told them that Barton was experiencing the same symptoms as Vice. Vivian informed him that they were already making plans to examine the two of them, and to go to the medical center as soon as they arrived. After finally arriving, Navigator was surprised by how big the medical center was, to which Vice explained how the bigger the center was, the more soldiers that can receive treatment. Not long after did they run into Vivian Barton, who was glowing just like Vice. Vivian took the two of them with her to get examined and had Navigator wait. While by himself, he couldn't help but think back to what he learned in the circular system, promising that he would never become a weapon he was fated to be. Soon 3 new characters had appeared before him, with one of them immediately picking up that Navigator was the much talked about Calistite, with the taller man quickly showing excitement from all the stories he'd heard before introducing themselves. This is how we meet Zhao, who works as a chief of staff for a town called Twilight, as well as introducing his assistant Crow and Sean. Twilight is a place that's located in the far west, which finds itself dealing with more appearances of eclipsites than other places. Although it's a place located in Illumina territory, it's affiliated with Lumopolis. However, even with that being said, it is often a place that is disregarded by the nobles, leaving the local knights and people mainly defending for themselves. Now it's a city that fights for itself and doesn't rely on neither Lumopolis nor Illumina. After having an engaging conversation with Navigator, the 3 went on their way. That's when Reinhardt showed up, explaining that she's dead for her routine physical, even telling him how she was long healed after using the medical equipment on Shiraz. Right then and there, Vice and Barton came back from their exam, to which Barton told them that they came back with nothing. The doctors and scientists couldn't find anything wrong with the two of them no matter how many tests they ran. When Navigator asked how they managed to stop glowing, he explained that it ceased right after they did a test of attacking with Luminatics. For now, everything seemed fine. Stepping in, Reinhardt asked Navigator if Illumina can have research access to Shiraz and the Obelisk of Return. She told him that after everything had happened, there had been more appreciation for calcite technology by the science community in Illumina. She's hoping they can learn to improve medicine and training. Navigator was hesitant about her offer, and knowing what he was thinking, she made a promise that Illumina will never go against his wishes, as well as compensating him and helping with repairing Shiraz. Though he does have his worries, Navigator accepted Reinhardt's offer as he trusts her. Reinhardt made a call to the research center to have them get ready, bringing Navigator and Vice with her in case they needed help, while Barton went back to the 2nd Legion. Taking them to the administrative area of the Illumina Research Center, Navigator was surprised by how busy it was, with so many scientists constantly working. We then reunite with Grunru, who had came with Midgard to help with some experiments and do research on Shiraz. Midgard is an Illumina research officer, oftentimes is described to be a pervert. She becomes way overly passionate when it comes to doing experiments. I mean, the girl ignores all types of personal boundaries when she's interested in someone or something. Even still, she's regarded as a highly skilled scientist within Illumina, and even owns her own lab called the Black Umbrella Laboratory. She also owns a creature called Divine Spines, to which she had fused it with herself. Not only does it make her more skillful for sword, but she's also capable of knowing what's going down within Ganon City. It was now time to start heading to the research center, having also met more oddball of scientists. Everyone was thanking Navigator and showing appreciation for his help, making him bashful. After the Grand Marshal gave the order to get started, Romu switched up and went into serious mode, dividing everyone into groups of A, B, and C. Group A will go to the obelisk and look into the cord link. Midgard led Group B as they will collect data on Shiraz's medical equipment. Group C is on standby as they will connect a data transmission cable to Shiraz's simulation room, a room Navigator uses to prepare for any kind of battle. This is something Gromu had previously installed on Shiraz. She hopes they can get data out of it using the Illumina Battle Simulator. Several hours had passed and everyone came back with their findings. Midgar informed them they were able to extract the data from the medical equipment. With this, they're now able to upgrade Illumina's equipment within this center. This made Navigator think back on when he met Zhao. Reinhardt told him that when Zhao was young, he had got badly wounded. His organs became affected by dark flow, giving him a fragile body. Even San is going through the same issues as well. Reinhardt mentioned that he was born with a genetic defect, but he continuously pushed himself through hard training, making it so that he was able to move as if he was fully healthy. It's people like him that Reinhardt hopes to make a breakthrough in their medical equipment. Soon, Group A returned as well. The scientists report that the Cordling can not only modify Orion's bodies, but also bring out their latent potential. From what they discovered, they believe the Cordling affects how they use the Illuminatics. Gromu had sold up with the helmet for the battle simulator. She said as soon as they had connected the helmet to Shiraz, the simulation room seemed to have upgraded by itself, being able to now simulate real battlefield conditions. With this, Navigator was eager to try it out himself. Once he put the helmet on, the environment changed around him. He was able to communicate with the others. As Gromu explains, if he imagined his companions, the simulator would project a replica of said Orion. He was able to project an exact replica of Vice. Gromu added in some eclipse sites for him to fight, being able to start the first test. Barely able to break a sweat, Navigator got through the first test easily. Making sure it was all clear, Gromu disconnected him from the helmet and got back to reality. Even though it was just a simulation, to Navigator, it felt as real as anything he experienced. Reinhardt was excited about it all, relishing the idea of giving Illumina soldiers actual combat experience before they even go to the front lines. Vice wanted to try it herself, but Gromu told that it was still Calistite technology, which means Navigator is the only one that can use it currently. And Reinhardt hopes it will be ready for the upcoming joint exercise. Explained by Vice, it's a training session that takes place every couple of years. All the factions in Astral will send representatives to compete in team and individual events, and whoever comes in first in the individual competition gets a chance to spar one-on-one with the Grand Marshal. Originally, Reinhardt just wanted to have a friendly spar with the winner, but before everyone knew it, it became part of the event. Navigator asked who was the last person to spar with her, and it turns out to be Carlene. Reinhardt was really impressed with her skills when the two of them sparred. She also brought it up that Navigator could compete as well, as Calistites used to participate back when they were around, and they would fight alongside Orions. Even joked with Navigator that she would spar with him if he ended up in first place, though they then agreed that it would be a simulation. Gromu came and said they completed the day's experiments, eager at the fact they'll possibly make a breakthrough by the next day. Wanting to ease his worries, a scientist told Navigator that they're working on Shiraz's maintenance at the same time, and to just be patient with them. For now, it was time for everyone to take a break until tomorrow. The next day, Navigator already found himself in a struggle. The man was starving, and no matter where he looked, he couldn't find not one restaurant in Ganon City. Being found by Vice and explaining his situation, Vice told him that Illumina operates on a rationing system. They're limited in resources and make it to where everyone has a set of rations, and that visitors basically need to apply for theirs, really honing in how much of a military faction they are. Luckily for Navigator, Vice had brought him some food, avoiding a life or death situation for him. Now it's time to go and help out with the battle simulator, in which Vice told him that last night the scientists discovered a new function. Back over at the research center, everyone had gathered and was eager to get the test started. Roman mentioned that with the upgrade they did, the battle simulator would be referred to as the battlefield simulator. Apparently the device updated itself after taking in data from Shiraz's new module, now able to recreate more historical battles from the past. Enemies, buildings, weather, all of it. But Navigator is still the only one who can use it, so now it was time to take another spin. Booting it up, he found himself back in the same place as last time. Roman was deciding what place to send him first. After looking through it, Reinhardt went and chose the destination, but after hearing Gromu's reaction, this obviously made Navigator worry. And before he can even get an answer, the scenery started to change, and from hearing the program saying where he's going, Navigator found himself in a battlefield during the Dark Zone War. He's now in the middle of the Dark Zone, and could even feel the dark foe that would be there, as if he was really feeling it. To Reinhardt, this was a good thing, hoping that Illumina can use this to have their soldiers experience the Dark Zone without actually being there. Now that they know how closely they can remake the environment, it was time to put into practice the combat. as Gromwood began programming in some enemies for Navigator to fight. The stage was as tough as if he was in the Dark Zone. Eclipse Lights was coming out everywhere, each as tough and hard to take down as the next one, and the programmed Vice was slowly getting towards the end of their health. Keeping calm and observing their surroundings, Navigator had Vice shoot a rock that was sticking out from above, causing it to come crashing down and take out a bunch of Eclipse Lights to clear the way for them, completing the stage and exiting the simulator. Navigator mentioned to Reinhardt how exhausted he felt, even though all he was really doing was sitting down. It really goes to show how realistic the simulator is able to make battles. Surprisingly, Gromwood mentioned the battle Navigator just fought in is the same battle Reinhardt fought herself, defeating 50 Eclipse Lights on that day while receiving minor injuries. A feat worthy of someone who holds the title of Grand Marshal. Reinhardt also gave credit to Navigator, telling him that he held up in the simulator much better than the first time he fought in the Dark Zone, and that he's come a long way while praising his commanding skills. Vice even mentioned that he's always had impressive commanding since they met, and Navigator said it was all due to Siraj teaching him during the time he was underground. This comes as surprising since Callicites are supposed to be known as a peace-loving race, but Navigator believes all his education may have originally come from the obelisk, but he doesn't think too hard on it, as he only plans on using it for what's important to him. This puts Reinhardt in a good mood. She was worried he was wearing himself out after the Eraville incident. The conversation soon transitioned over to Siraj, as they wonder why his consciousness hasn't returned yet. Gromwood states they probably can do nothing but wait for the moment, as AI technology is still far beyond Illumina's capabilities. But she has some good news. Explained by an Illumina scientist, they found some battle records in Siraj's new module, and not just any records, but ones that existed in ancient history. This could possibly give them ancient data on Colossi, which could progress in fully repairing Siraj. With Navigator committed with what he has to do, the scientists explain they'll load up an ancient battle for him to go through. While he fights in it, they'll observe and collect any data they can. Gromwood warns he needs to be careful, as this is the first time they are doing anything like it. Committed and ready, Navigator puts on the helmet and begins his adventure into the ancient past. After activating the helmet, Navigator finds himself to be what looked like to be a ruined city. He tried to call out to Vice and Reinhardt, but wasn't getting any response. Outside, Reinhardt was trying to call out to Navigator, but he wasn't responding. Things seemed to have taken an unexpected turn. Gromwood stated they're able to see what he's seeing, yet they can't seem to communicate with him. Reinhardt ordered to cut the connection, but for some reason Gromwood is unable to. Reinhardt then suggested that they force the helmet off, but Midgard came in and advised against it. She stated that while the simulator is running, it had formed a connection with Navigator's consciousness, so if they force the helmet off, he could suffer permanent damage to his brain. It was looking to be a very scary situation. Back inside the simulator, Navigator was still unable to reach anybody, and he couldn't tell where he was at. The city didn't look anything like Illumina or Lumopolis to him, figuring it's an ancient city. That's when he hears the sound of people running towards him. The crowd of people ran right past him as they was being chased by Eclipse Lights. Still being able to summon an imaginary Vice, Navigator had to take it out. The sound of soldiers could be heard as they were fighting against the Eclipse Lights, but the Illuminati seemed too weak. They didn't stand a chance. Navigator begged them to retreat, but the soldiers stood their ground. He couldn't just watch the slaughter go on any longer, and commanded Vice to assist and fight off the enemy. Outside the sim, everyone was continuing to monitor Navigator while trying to look for a way to get him out. Gromwood discovered that none of the buildings looked anything like those made by Martyr or Orions. They're more similar to the buildings in the ancient city our group discovered during the Maidens in the Ruins event. This is back when Navigator, Vice, and Carlene found themselves underground and discovered an entire ancient city. In other words, this predates Orion history. Reinhardt orders to keep recording and keep an eye on Navigator, looking out for anything that can get him out of the simulator. Back inside, Navigator could tell something strange was going on. Even though he was taking out the Eclipse Lights, there's been no indication of a stage like previously, and no matter how many he takes out, more Eclipse Lights just keeps coming at him. It's beginning to put Navigator in a panic. Suddenly, a loud rumbling starts to occur. Things around him starts to collapse, and when a soldier mentioned that demons were coming, Navigator's head starts experiencing a sharp pain. Suddenly, it seemed like someone was trying to reach out to him, telling him to wake up and not to give up. That's when the scenery changes again. This time, a horde of Eclipse Lights was off in the distance, and he could see Colossi flying in the sky, confirming to Navigator that the records he got from the obelisk was true, that Callicites and Orions were indeed once enemies. A broadcast could then be heard, motivating the soldiers to continue holding the line. The sight before him was beginning to become a horror show. Soldiers were continuing to fall to the eclipse, one after another. They just kept fighting no matter how much of a disadvantage they were in. Navigator just couldn't believe what was happening before his eyes. Then he begins hearing some mechanical sounds, telling Navigator that his objective is to get to a safe area. A soldier informed how it's safer in the back. All this made Navigator remember that he was still in the simulator, and how everything he's seeing right now is an event in the past. With no other option, Navigator was following the soldiers in order to get to a safe place. That's when he finds a whole group gathered up. As he attempted to offer help, suddenly a rainbow aura shined above them, and next thing he knew, he heard them praying to the god of light, the same god that the people of Luminopolis worships. The battle was getting worse as it went on, but when the Eclipsite tried to attack them, it perished within the aura. Navigator wanted to desperately help them, but they refused his offer, telling him the only ones that need to fight are those that can control Lumina. With all of them together, they began praying to the god of light once again, as a powerful Lumina appeared and wiped out an entire mob of Eclipsite. But it wasn't a complete win, as the light was taking out the people as well. Nothing but death occurring on both sides, a complete nightmare to Navigator. He barely managed to hang on when the light went away. Nothing was around him, at least that's what he thought, as a high-level Eclipsite suddenly sprung up. It wasn't like any Eclipsite he's seen before. Its body was snake-like, and no matter how much damage Navigator dealt to it, it just kept growing bigger and bigger. He couldn't help but wonder if this was an error within the simulator. All he can do was fall back and keep trying to reach the others, but still no response, and the Eclipsite was right on the verge of taking him out. But to his surprise, a miracle occurred. A message popped up through Navigator's mind, and then, in a sudden reunion, Shiraz appeared before him, letting Navigator know that he's always able to protect him, even in the virtual world. Shiraz asked him to trust him in disconnecting from him. Once he did, an autopilot system was kicking in, and Navigator was now back in reality. Everybody was relieved to see him awake. Midgard immediately made preparations to check on Navigator for anything that can be off. After all, this was a very unique situation for them. Gromwu figured the problem occurred in the difference of technology, as the simulator was a newly developed tech being used on Shiraz. She also believed that regenerated Eclipsite was there due to him being in corrupt data. But for the moment, Navigator just wanted to know how Shiraz was doing. Gromwu told him because of how he forced the connection to cut, Shiraz's consciousness was now trapped inside the simulator. And right now his personality is in a blank state and his memories turned into pure information. Navigator went into a complete panic, trying over and over again to link with him. It was a very intense atmosphere and emotions were beginning to run high. But as Navigator was arguing with the scientist, in comes Yingzhou. Yingzhou is an intelligence officer who works closely with the committee, specifically the Science Council. When she was only 4 years old, her parents left her in the care of a Professor Ulysses. They were luminous soldiers and went off to fight in the war. Unfortunately, they didn't survive. And as Yingzhou grew up, she eventually became an luminous soldier just like them. She was considered to be very talented and smart for her age, and able to solve puzzles and compete in chess matches. And this eventually led her to become part of what is called the Phosphorus program within Illumina. Now she is a very accomplished soldier, who is trusted with the future of Illumina. Yingzhou came in to inform Reinhardt that the Science Council is able to hold a secret meeting, yet not much of a secret when you're saying this in a room full of people. She delivered an order that the council wanted to talk with Navigator in person, and for Reinhardt to attend as well. Navigator was reluctant to leave, but Midgard assured him that she and Gromwu will make sure no one messes with Shiraz while he was gone. Navigator agreed, as he also had questions about the ancient battle, following Yingzhou as they head to the meeting room. Before going inside, Reinhardt was telling Navigator about the Science Council, how they are some of the most important members of Illumina besides the committee. They're located all over Illumina and occasionally have secret meetings. They keep their identities hidden due to them having knowledge of the Federation's secrets. She said the last time they met was to vote on the next Grand Marshal, and as Yingzhou asked him to hurry up, it made Navigator take note of how high a position they're in if just an intelligence officer can talk to the Grand Marshal like that. As they went inside, Navigator found himself in a very vast room, surrounded by a great number of Illumina tech, and in front of him was 5 large screens in the display, 4 of which to be showing silhouettes. As everyone was seated, Yingzhou went on to introduce each member of the council. There's Professor Ulysses, a biologist, Mr. Joyce, who is a physicist, the engineer Ms. Barrett, and finally, Algol, who's showing off as someone that's not afraid to show what they're feeling. Algol is one of the Illumina's top scientists and in charge of artificial intelligence. She carries with her a nanorobot she named Bull. Easily another scientist who's really into what they do. Someone that is extremely curious about not just AI, but also ancient civilizations and the future of Orions. Even though she can't talk with Bull like with other Orions, is able to communicate with her through what she considers massages, though sometimes he ends up getting broken bones, and it's because of this form of communication that she keeps her body trained to prevent from breaking down. They kicked off the main leg. Ulysses Lane Navigator asked 3 questions. He started off with questioning whether everything in the simulator really happened. Barrett confirmed it all to be true, that a civilization inhabited Astra way before Orions and Callistites, but not all had the ability to use special powers like during modern times. The few that did evolved to become Orions. Barrett still didn't know exactly what demons referred to back then, as the research center was still studying that. However, she did confirm to Navigator that there was a war between the Orions against the Callistites and Eclipsites. Navigator hypothesized that after the battle, Eclipsites returned to the Dark Zone and Callistites disappeared, and the surviving Orions had built a new civilization, fighting off any Eclipsites that remained in Astra. Almost immediately after, Barrett had came out from hiding and revealed herself to everyone, showing that she's becoming more interested with Navigator as they're talking. He then goes on to ask about the ancient Orions and how exactly the few was able to use Illuminatics, specifically the people who was praying. Joyce intervened and stated how Illuminatics is still a debated topic to this day, how everyone has their own meaning to what it is. This is when Joyce explained it's an ability to use vitality to direct energy. The difference between Orions and Callistites being able to use it or not comes down to practical application. He then went into how different factions went into using Illuminatics. Illumina uses technology to control the effects and drive machinery, while with Lumopolis, it comes down to faith, which is using Illuminatics at its source. Yinjo reminded Ulysses the purpose of the meeting as 10 minutes had already passed, which eventually led to Ulysses to reveal that she was a subject of the Phosphorus program. This was a program to modify Illumina soldiers into bringing out their potential, very similar to the Cord Link, but Reinhardt was not happy about this as the program should have been shut down years ago. Ulysses revealed that the committee simply held the vote of whether or not to shut it down. Reinhardt was not a fan of this program as it involved experimenting on Orions. The conversation was beginning to become intense for Navigator. She asked him to use his last question to ask what they hope to achieve with modification experiments. At the same time, she wants him to be careful as she believes the council is still debating about Navigator. Joyce believed Navigator was just using his powers to talk to Reinhardt, but for the moment he kept this thought to himself. That's when he decided to step out and reveal himself, as Navigator asked about the Phosphorus program. As he had mentioned about Helios, Ulysses came out and admitted that he's been the one doing the experiments. His answer was that it's all for Illumina, as stronger soldiers means less lives lost. Navigator found it to be nonsense before bringing up what happened with Helios, which prompted Ulysses to come out and reveal himself as well. He revealed that Helios was actually a failed subject from a different experiment. This really sent Reinhardt off, as the failed experiment ruined his life and turned him to an Eclipsite. She wanted to end the meeting right there. However, Barrett stated that the meeting would go on with or without her, but that Navigator was to remain until they were done, cornering Reinhardt that it's best for everyone's interest that she stayed as an authoritative figure. Finally, Algo was the last to come out, getting into the main reason why they had called for Navigator. Now that they answered his questions truthfully, she revealed that the Science Council wants Navigator to use his powers to connect with an ancient AI called Guardian 1. Its current task is managing computations and daily operations for Illumina Tech. They're hoping because of how much Saraz continually upgraded himself in connecting with Navigator, the same thing could happen if Navigator connects with Guardian 1. Algo also states that if he does this, the ancient memories he finds could help him turn his rights back to normal, as well as the chance of reuniting with Saraz. After hearing that, Navigator immediately jumped on the opportunity and agreed to help. When Algo brought out Guardian 1, it wasn't quite what he expected. While Navigator was expecting some grand machinery, Guardian 1 just looked like some old prototype with a hand sticking out. Yet at the same time, Guardian 1 also seemed to have expressed disappointment when seeing Navigator. Algo tried to put in some new connection protocols, but Guardian 1 denied it. It's very strict about what external module it connects to. Its denial was initially based off of old Callistite data, but because it did agree to connect with Navigator, it decided to first test his skills before giving him permission. When he connected with Guardian 1, Navigator found himself in the same place from the battlefield simulator. The objective is for Navigator to familiarize with the environment while also fighting off Eclipsites. Believing this to be an opportunity to find Saraz, Navigator asked to be able to examine the battlefield data if he passes. Guardian 1 agreed and began the test, as Navigator projected Carlene and Vice to get ready to fight. He was able to pass the test, and upon agreement, Guardian 1 made a record for Navigator. As it was getting ready to destroy the simulation, Navigator quickly linked with it to stop. When it asked for an explanation, he told him all about what happened with Siraz, and believes his consciousness data is somewhere within the battlefield data. Guardian 1 understood and started updating its database. When the scene changed to Algo, we got the sense that everything between Guardian 1 and Navigator had been kept secret. Now Algo is able to communicate with Navigator, as it was time to do the experiment. The objective is for Guardian 1 to study Navigator's uses of ancient tech through a telepathic link. When Reinhardt wished him good luck, she secretly hopes this experiment will change how their scientists approach things with technology. Once ready, Navigator went and connected with Guardian 1. Finding himself within its mind space, Guardian 1 wanted to search for Siraz signals to access. Reluctant at first, Navigator agreed in order to prove that he trusts Guardian 1, and so they first start off by going to the battlefield. When Navigator asked how Siraz could be trapped in the simulator, Guardian 1 explained that its mind is just pure data, just like the simulator, and because he interfered with the simulation, the data mixed together. Now they're on a clock as the simulation they're in is set to self-destruct, because of the events that took place and humanity was dying out, causing the simulation to repeatedly erase itself. Suddenly, they discovered surviving eclipse sites that were eating red bars. Guardian 1 guessed it's because they weren't destroyed in the catastrophe, and so the eclipse sites consumed them in hopes to gain resistance. They even went to the point in consuming each other, all in order to survive. Navigator began to notice all the eclipse sites going in the same direction. When he used his powers, he found out they were going to Siraz. When Navigator tried to engage in an attack, a building near them collapsed. Guardian 1 said it's because the simulation is unstable, and his attacks could cause the world to collapse. Now they really have to hurry, or Siraz will be erased with the rest of the simulation. As Navigator fights off any eclipse site they couldn't avoid, Guardian 1 began a countdown to when the simulation is destroyed. Navigator was desperately moving fast as time was beginning to run out before he knew it. Until the very last second, Navigator managed to link with Siraz. He wasn't answering to his call at first, but with Guardian 1's help, Navigator entered into his mind space. When Navigator next opened his eyes, he seemed to be in a temporary memory, as Siraz was right in front of him, just drifting. Guardian 1 said they now need to find the glitch data that caused Siraz's malfunction, but in order to make it easier to find, Guardian 1 is going to use Navigator's memories to change the scenery, and find the glitch data by disguising it as something Navigator doesn't like. The first location is the cabin. Navigator tried to open one of the doors, but all of them were completely sealed. This is apparently because there was no air outside. Navigator tried to use the control console to see where they were, but there was no data whatsoever. He couldn't tell where they were or what memory they're in. After calming down and some joking around, Guardian 1 discovered what seemed to be an ancient text in the terminal. Using the translation procedures, Guardian 1 was able to decipher it. It seemed to be a conversation between Calistites, each going by numbers, and mentioned that the city of Obelisk has fallen. It seemed like they're going to some unknown place, and even had mentioned Master Francis during their talks. And from the sound of it, they've been traveling for a long time. As he was reading the conversation, Navigator felt nostalgic as their situation reminded him of the underground. Guardian 1 stated this could have been either exile or refugee. Navigator thinks that it was done in an emergency based off the conversations. It made him curious about what could have happened that caused them to leave. As the conversation had ended, Guardian 1 did a search through Siraz's memories, skipping through those that don't have any glitches, and without explaining to Navigator, this ends up putting them in some places that has eclipse sites, as that's the form that glitches took. With that, Navigator took on the eclipse sites as they continued their search. After all the fighting, there was just one batch of glitches left to deal with. Guardian 1 warned him that these glitches could be more formidable than the others, but before they moved on, Navigator wanted to look at the terminal again, as time seemed to be different from where they first started. This time, there were fewer Calistites talking than last time. You could tell something was different based off the topics. One Calistite that went by 35 wanted to make a poem for 982, but once he came back after finishing, 982 wasn't responding. The more time that went by, less and less Calicites were on the terminal. Right now, it was just 35 by herself, reaching out to the others over and over again. Not a single one had responded to her calls. When Navigator was done with the terminal, he couldn't help but feel sad over the situation. It started with all those Calistites together, just to end with one little girl who was clearly lonely. Guardian 1 closely took note of how Navigator was feeling, as it wanted to understand him even more. Suddenly, glitches began happening all around. Apparently, this is because of defective data. Guardian 1 didn't understand the exact cause. Taking a guess, it thinks this is due to an anomaly that's similar to forgetfulness. Thinking he can find something, Navigator accessed the terminal once again. This time, 35 was telling stories to the Colossi, from the time she first got her credential to when she first departed with the others. You could say this was all in an attempt to keep herself from going insane. She then had an idea to give names to the Colossi. That's when one of the companions, who goes by 79, finally appeared again. She wanted to ask 35 to write her a poem, but suddenly the conversation was interrupted and the surroundings changed. Guardian 1 said it's because Shiraz didn't have a lot of memories of that moment. Then some loud banging occurred as the door was being rammed. This seemed to be the glitch they was looking for, as it took the form of an eclipsite that looked like a flower. Mentioned by Guardian 1 that its name was Diavola. It was time to face its last challenge, as Navigator and Guardian 1 got ready for a fight, even though it was a 10% chance at victory. When they engaged in battle, Guardian 1 was giving out commands to help Navigator fight, seeing that Navigator was struggling against the enemy. But thanks to Guardian 1's help, Navigator struck Diavola in the core and managed to destroy it. With that, all the glitches were taken care of. Even still, Guardian 1 wasn't sure about the state of Shiraz's personality, due to the difference in tech. For now, all they can do is a few more experiments and wait. But before leaving, Navigator wanted to check the terminal one last time. This time, 35 seems to be a much older person. She was giving out commands to test the Colossi. Two of those were Shiraz and Avidas. Like before, 35 was interacting with the Colossi and telling them stories. Even had a firefly keeping records of where she left off. To her surprise, it was actually talking back without the needs of a command. To Navigator, this was showcasing the evolution of the Colossi, where they start developing their own personalities. This was without a doubt the beginning of something new during the time, as these Colossi even got to the point of telling jokes. Those generally gave Navigator a lot of joy to see, and proves that Colossi like Shiraz aren't just mindless machines. The terminal then got to the point of 35 asking for a poem, indicating this could be the end for her. With nothing else to do, Navigator asked Guardian 1 to fast forward some more. Years started to pass by, and that's when Guardian 1 told Navigator that a new message had came in the terminal, after maybe what was thousands of years had passed. When Guardian 1 played it, it was for the Colossi to return. Every Colossus started going full speed ahead as they were returning to Eraville. It was a sight to behold for Navigator. Before he knew it, Navigator and Guardian 1 had disconnected. Guardian 1 told the others how Callistites had left Astra on their Colossi, before eventually returning after a significant amount of time to Eraville. Barrett believed they had left because of the destruction of the civilization. Meanwhile, Yinzhou checked on Navigator to make sure he was okay. He mentioned he was alright, then almost immediately checked to see if Shiraz had his awareness back. Even though nothing seems to be malfunctioning, Shiraz still wasn't responding to Navigator's call. Algo came up and mentioned the possibility that Shiraz could simply have had a reset, and because he didn't have awareness in the beginning, he simply returned to how he originally was. This made Navigator believe that no matter what he does, Shiraz won't ever get his consciousness back. But Algo thinks that isn't the case. She thinks all he has to do is repeat what gave Shiraz a personality in the first place, and that's to talk to him. But that wasn't the only option he had, as Algo also believed that if Navigator could get his hands on the data from other Colossi, it could also help speed up the process. And that's when they have a proposal for him, having Ulysses explain it. He told Navigator about how Illumina has been studying on ancient Colossi, but they don't currently have the files on them. In exchange for Navigator helping with Colossi research, they will send representatives to negotiate with scientists who currently have the files. Seeing this as an opportunity, Navigator agreed. Ulysses had Yinzhou gave Navigator some files. These files seemed to be about a place called the Aurora Ruins. Navigator went into the halls to read them. However, a lot of it was censored. All he could make out was a Colossus being in some war, but it didn't say when or where it happened. Then Reinhardt appeared. She came to give him a warning and brought up Twilight, as that's where he'll be going next. That place has long suffered from war. Twilight is a place that doesn't believe in neither Lumopolis or Illumina. They only look out for themselves, and so Navigator might run into more problems than just Eclipsites. But he's prepared to take on whatever comes, all for the sake of Shiraz. And this brings the end of episode 13. There we go, another episode in, and Navigator is on to a new destination. We got a deep dive into some more ancient history, a major event that took place, a look at some of the earliest of Orions to use Luminatics, even more discussions about calcites and their culture. This was a major lore heavy episode. Things are slowly becoming more and more different and secrets being revealed. So tune in when we go over Navigator's adventures of Twilight in episode 14. Until then, may the truth bless you.